And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's panel. First, Coralie Bordeaux. She is a visionary and results-driven marketing professional with 15 plus years of experience at multinational organizations. She is now currently marketing program lead for customer value propositions at ABB's electrification business area. And she's been instrumental in implementing value creation methodologies across divisions, facilitating the transition to a customer-centric go-to-market strategy. And I'm also joined by a cross-section of LeveragePoint's commercial team. So Brian Hannon, VP of Sales at LeveragePoint, and we're going to be joined a little bit later by Aaron Miller, who's our VP of Product. For those of you who aren't familiar with my voice, my name is Nick Welter. I'm the voice of the LeveragePoint webinar series and Senior Director of Marketing, and I'm pleased to moderate our session today. So first, I'd like to start with just a note. We are not experts in AI, but we are experts in value. We have years of experience quantifying and helping B2B companies quantify and communicate value. So the goal of today's session is to share what we've learned about all the ways in which AI can be applied in this space, as well as the exciting direction we believe value communication, value selling is headed with the advent of Gen AI. So to set the stage, I'd figured we'd start on the ground floor with a question for our panel. So I think I'd invite Coralie first just to answer this question. How do high quality value conversations positively impact marketing and sales execution in your experience?
Okay, so hi everybody, first of all, and thanks for having me, team of LeveragePoint. So I believe that they are really transformative, so both for the marketing and the sales execution. So I think the conversations are really fundamental in building trust, but also credibility with potential customers. And also they kind of shift the focus from the pure pricing to the real pains and gains experienced by our customers. And I think that approach really helps in highlighting the unique value your solution brings, so really making it more compelling. And I think with these high quality value conversations, they're not about selling a product, they're really about creating meaningful connections so that really can drive sustained business growth.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And Brian, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so obviously we're big fans of high quality value conversations. It's what we do every day. So I think if we had 100, marketing people here and we asked 100 of them, is value important as part of a sales process, you'd probably get 100 people saying yes. It's something that is pretty much accepted. So, value being part of a good sales and marketing process is accepted. Getting it right is the challenging part. I think having a value conversation as part of every sales cycle is important, and there's a lot of things that need to happen to make the people involved in that, the marketing people creating the content, the sales people doing it, happy and successful at doing it. And so I would put the pressure on creating an environment that makes that happen, will allow you to see the benefits of the high quality conversations. So I think we'll talk a lot about that today.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah,
go ahead, Coralie.
I just want to say that I believe, I agree with Brian actually. So really getting it right and having that mindset and the environment to really get the chance for our sales guys to have these high quality value conversations important. And then also it's a lot of steps. So it's not that easy to turn around.
Right, and I think that's a really important point that we want to get at. So, and I think a few of you mentioned a few themes like highlighting economic value over functionality and price, cultivating trust. I think, as Coralie said, and making sure that salespeople are armed with the right content. This has a number of effects on the B2B sales process. We see these effects with the companies that we work with. Companies that don't work with us but engage in value selling also see similar effects. And we think that value conversations are critical because they lead to improved what we would call sales velocity. And there's four main ways in which that impacts a deal pipeline. So with great value conversations through value selling, you're going to increase the number of qualified ops in the pipeline. You'd expect to see improved win rates. We see that there are increased deal sizes as well as reduced sales cycle time. So value selling touches on all four of these sales velocity levers and really can make a top to bottom impact on B2B commercial excellence. Now, this all sounds amazing. So why isn't every B2B company doing it already? So there's a few reasons why, and you'll hear a lot of the things, a lot of people say lack of bandwidth, competing priorities, lack of investment, sales training needs, adoption, et cetera. But we believe sitting at the heart of it all is that the content that supports these critical value conversations. If the conversation is the key to unlocking the impact of value selling, the right content is the right delivery mechanism. It's got to be central to making it happen. So how does strong value content support memorable conversations? Simply put, it's about wrapping an economic argument within a compelling story. Therefore, it's got to be narrative based. People remember things best when presented in a story format. It's got to be customizable. So buyers respond best when it's clear you understand their business and their problems. You want it to be interactive. Interactivity is your chance to generate buy-in and capture data relevant to their business in real time. And finally, it needs to be quantitative. What you're doing is you're selling your value, and that means you're differentiating yourself on how much more money you're going to make for that company than the competition. So that helps you avert the early price discussion and getting bogged down in features and functionalities, and centering the customer's business and on why they should select your solution. So that all is the ideal. What typically happens in a sales conversation is that there's a misalignment between the message they hope to send and the content that they have to work with in their toolkit. So for most sales reps, the primary vehicle for sales communication are PowerPoints. They're everywhere, they're static, we're using it right now. But in a B2B value selling context, they fail to support two-way conversations. And I had an old boss that called them PowerPoints where information goes to die. So even if you do update them, you're not systemically refining your value story to that customer and future customers. Case studies are also used, and they're a great tool. I'm a marketer. I love case studies more than most things, but they do have this effect of being static and specific to a single customer that might not be relevant. Great as a justification piece, especially if it's relevant, but often it's used as a leave behind or an add-on rather than central to the conversation in the sales process. You'll also find that spreadsheet calculators are commonly used. So these are things that your value office or your product team might come up with. Typically, they live in Excel. And I think most of us can appreciate that Excel value calculators are ugly, they're bespoke, they're not visually appealing, and they're hard to use. And then you have this issue of them, being used for a different purpose, them breaking. So they get underutilized in that manner. And finally, you're starting to see a universe of ROI report tools, as we call them, that might generate custom ROI reports with a few data points change for the individual customer, and they send them out at scale. They provide limited ROI analysis, which is great, but they tend to get stuck in inboxes. And again, they're used as a leave behind, not central to conversation. So what ties all these four together is that in different ways, they each do not fit they each do not all have the necessary ingredients to facilitate a good value conversation. So some companies turn to companies like LeveragePoint or similar to get around this. Some try to stitch together a homegrown solution. But ultimately, you're going to need the value content presented at the center of a sales conversation to have a great value conversation. And this can be hard. So I think this is a nice pivot to the panel again. So I figured I'd ask, what are some challenges you've seen in creating high quality value content? So Coralie, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I think when I think about challenges, the first one that always comes to mind would be focusing on features instead of benefits. I mean, it's really crucial to articulate how your product or service addresses customer pain points and really delivers tangible value. I think that's really always my number one. Then I also see time constraints for product managers, because they also very often juggle, multiply responsibilities, really making it challenging for dedicated sufficient time to really then have high quality value content. So I think it's one of a big one for us as well. And then also there's, you mentioned it, the quantification. So there's also the difficulty in quantifying financial impact. So to really accurately quantifying the financial benefits of a product or a solution or even a service can be really complex, So identifying the right metrics and really obtaining precise estimates really, I think, requires thorough analysis and also reliable data. And that can be very time consuming and challenging to gather very oftenly for us. And then also maybe one that is significant for us as a global company is really balancing the global value proposition with the local market nuances. So local competitors may have a better understanding of regional customer needs and also the preferences. So it's making it very essential to tailor value content that resonates then on both global and local level. So I think that would be like my key challenges that I see for us at least.
We hear those a lot. So thank you for that. So Brian, maybe the sales perspective on this, because I think those are all themes that we hear frequently.
Yeah, I mean, I think of, and this is, sort of rephrasing what Coralie said a little bit, but I think of two main things. There's the getting started aspect, which is you have product managers who may be doing this once per year, maybe at best twice per year. So they're not, experts at the process. So sometimes they just avoid getting started, and it's a natural thing. The other challenge is sort of the interactivity. So when you do have customers in many cases who have invested time and energy, and it's all invested in a spreadsheet, for example, and they hand that to their sales force and say, okay, this spreadsheet is accurate, it works, we spent months on it, don't screw it up and use it. And the salespeople go, great, I don't know what's going on in the spreadsheet. There's about a 0% chance I'm going to use it, but I'm going to smile and tell you I'm going to use it. And then hopefully 6 months from now, you don't ask me if I've opened it up, because they're really not going to show it to customers, because it doesn't have the interactivity. It doesn't have the back and forth that they're looking for. And it's really important for a customer to feel comfortable sharing information with a salesperson, and for the salesperson to accept that, use it, and build it into the back and forth conversation. A spreadsheet just doesn't fly. So even though it might be correct, it just doesn't get used.
Right. And I think that handshake between marketing and sales is one that's often overlooked when implementing some of these large scale value selling initiatives. Sales usability is a must. So I think we both touched on a bunch of important challenges that organizations looking to create and deploy value content need to overcome. And there are a couple main ways that they currently tend to approach this, and one that we're going to talk about that we think is going to be the next wave of value selling. So the first one is something I like to call the firefighter approach. So this is where we're calling this reactive value selling. And this is where an individual or team of value experts are deployed to rescue accounts at risk, win high priority deals. The content sometimes is excellent, sometimes less so, but sometimes just one of those calculators that Brian talked about. But it's extremely scenario specific is the thing that stitches all together. And the downside of this is it limits reuse, limits scalability and expertise, while often leading to mistakes when it gets out into the wild. Again, this is a model that we think is much better than not value selling at all. It can be very effective situationally and often is a great start, but it can get really chaotic at scale. So at LeveragePoint, and for a long time, we've long advocated a more proactive method of value selling, where you are introducing flexible interactive content that is created by product and marketing teams, distributed at scale to sales teams, and they use it to expand the footprint and impact of value selling. One of the downsides, and this is the main only downside, is that it's difficult to scale. We talk a lot about ways to better scale it, do it efficiently, do it well, do it effectively, but there's a big time constraint for a lot of the reasons that Coralie and Brian just talked about. So this leads us to a concept we're going to call high velocity value selling, which we believe is the future. So this is powered by advances in Gen AI that promise to shave down some of the fixed time costs associated with the proactive value selling model, accelerating the impact of value selling. And there's going to be some added considerations that operating at this velocity does introduce. We're going to explore some of those later in the session. But first, I want to take a look at what these second two models look like and how they might vary. So I'm going to introduce an optimistic projection of how long it takes to create strong value content. And many of you out there, especially at large orgs, might roll your eyes, but it takes, but once a cross-functional team meets to identify sources of value and competitive differentiation, whether it's a new product or an existing solution, it takes a good chunk of time to translate that into a mathematical model that can be used by sales. That's the sales usability piece and that Brian touched on. A presentation then needs to contain that, that contains that math needs to be designed. The whole thing needs to be refined and approved by the business unit, the product or marketing leader, anyone else in the org, and then it gets rolled out to sales. So this is the optimistic time frame. We've seen, and especially in large enterprises, this process can get stretched out over weeks and months. This rework, meetings, approval steps. It adds time bloat and gives a multiplier effect on the time horizon to value. So fortunately, once the discipline is established, it gets a little bit easier to do successive value stories. They take a little bit less time to create. You're still dealing with a lot of these steep fixed time costs, which is why many companies choose to focus value selling on the most strategically important offerings, which is what we recommend doing today. In this example, a value selling pilot that took 6 months to off the ground led to the decision to expand to 2 different offerings. Now, this investment tends to be worth it as the year 1 return in this hypothetical example justifies the effort. But even in the scenario where these initiatives are launched on a really, really tight time frame, the year 1 impact is blunted because of the fixed time cost to deploy. You're waiting to see results before you're rolling out the 2nd and 3rd solutions because of these resource constraints. So let's imagine for a second a more accelerated model. One where we can quickly identify and refine value drivers with a few taps of the mouse, entering a few keystrokes. And imagine that we would have a mathematical model that was automated, and imagine a presentation was generated, and both of those only needed 30 minutes to be refined, updated with your proprietary data, making sure that it fits your formula to the exact specifications. Then you're off and running. Your team is empowered to make the necessary edits, achieve feedback approvals, and deploy. So by shaving down the time on the content creation side, you can unlock a world where value content can be continuously deployed for most or all your solutions. Rather than undertaking a pilot and replicating, reducing the time cost to get to great value content means that you can turn these out one by one at a rapid pace. Your team can arm sales with value content for each of their differentiated solutions. And in this scenario, the annualized impact would be over doubled even the most aggressive rollout that we showed in the previous slide. Accelerating time to value because of providing an automated workflow for marketing and product teams to arm sales with the content they need and for sales to win more business. So that seems like an exciting model in the direction we want to go down. And now that we are seeing the technology catch up to what we want it to do, we feel that by combining LeveragePoint's proprietary methodology with the power of generative AI, we can unlock a new frontier of B2B profitability. So we have, so with that, I'd like to pass it over to my colleague, Aaron Miller, who will be sharing some of the exciting work we're doing at the intersection of value and AI. So Aaron, I'm going to give you control.
Thanks, Nick. All right. Very excited to share this with you guys today. And I'm going to be taking a sort of 3-step approach here to the demo. And I hope I get a thumbs up here from Nick that you're seeing my ChatGPT.
Seeing your ChatGPT screen and hearing you well.
Awesome. So for those of you who are familiar with ChatGPT, this should look familiar. This is a public-facing page. Anyone can go and access chatgpt.com. Don't think that was the case 6 months ago, but really you can go in there now and start using it. And it's a really incredibly powerful tool. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. And one way to get started, we've put in here what we call a prompt, and when you put a prompt into ChatGPT, you don't really just want to ask for what you're looking for. You kind of need to phrase it in specific ways. And so what we've done here is we've kind of teased everything out here, right? So first of all, give the Gen AI a role. So who is the Gen AI acting as? They're acting as a value selling expert in the human resources software space, for this example, right? Now, okay, it knows who they are. What do we want them to do? Create a dollarized customer value proposition. For what purpose? It's for a sales presentation. And now the really key important parts, now we've got that kind of blurb out of the way, is that we want to create this for Workday's talent management solution. So I've basically given it a role, I've given it a context, and I've asked it for some help to create a value story. And when I click through on that, I actually get a fairly decent response here. And there's going to be some mixed results across different industries and companies and solutions. But I actually get something pretty decent here with this question. So first of all, it gives me a summary back of what I'm asking it for, right? It says, to create a compelling dollarized value proposition, we have to focus on quantifiable benefits that align with key business drivers like efficiency, cost savings, productivity, and talent retention. And that's spot on, right? That's exactly what we're looking for. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom here for a quick second, because I think this is ultimately what we want, right? Total estimated annual value. It gives me 4 value drivers, $2.25 million from reduced turnover, $2.5 million from increased productivity, et cetera, et cetera. It all adds up to over $6 million annually, which sounds awesome. For us at LeveragePoint, that's always a good place to start. And then we work back and say, okay, where did all those numbers come from? And here I can say, okay, let's go to the first one, increase in employee retention. A company with 1,000 employees, annual turnover rate of 15%, would save 30 employees a year at a cost of about $75,000 per person, so $2.25 million. It gives me the numbers. It gives me the math even too, right? So sometimes you can get pretty good results out of this. But again, the key word is sometimes. And what you also can't do is operationalize it very easily. So I'm going to take a step here to step 2 before we go into the LeveragePoint tool and look at an advanced Gen AI tool that we're using to kind of streamline everything. So you'll notice if we take a step back again, here's the original question. I have to give it context. I have to give it its role. I have to ask it for what I'm looking for. Here, I have just 2 inputs. What company are we talking about today? Workday. What offering are we talking about? Talent management solution. And I can hit run here. Now, in the background, it's going to be doing all kinds of work, right? Rather than what we call here this sort of single shot approach where you ask for one question and you get a giant answer. Here, we've developed a complete workflow where it's going through and it's figuring out all kinds of important information about Workday's talent management solution and then assembling it together into a cohesive story. So when the results that I actually get a few different things. Number one, I get a list of case studies. And this is something that we've asked it for specifically. These case studies start with, what is the value driver or the business impact here? Enhanced employee engagement. And for that, what is the problem? A company was struggling with employee turnover. What's the dollarization? Each company, each thing they lost $20,000 in costs, and the impact by switching to Workday, they get 150 positions, $20,000, 25% to $750,000. So you'll see that the math looks similar, right, to what we got before. But what we've done is we've standardized it, and we've asked it to give it back in the same format every time, so we can get consistent results. So I've got 4 impacts here: improved recruitment efficiency, optimized development initiatives, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't just have the value drivers. I also have the story that goes with it. So you'll see here, if I click on this plain text output, I've got a solution overview, right? What is this solution all about? Recruitment efficiency, optimized development initiatives. I've got descriptions of value drivers. I've got lots of supportive text as well going along with the map. And most importantly for us is we need the code. And so we've got this JSON element here where it converts all of this into code that we can ingest into LeveragePoint and get to our final product, which is, of course, something that looks like this. Now, I say ingest because today we're doing that part. We're putting the code in there, but by the time we launch this for beta access next year, it's all going to be completely seamless. And so you click go and you can review those results and then also jump right to the presentation here. So I've taken that leap. I'm looking at my presentation here, and you'll notice that not only is it bringing in, of course, the name of the solution, but it's bringing in some nice graphics. It's bringing in Workday's branding, right? We've got Workday's blue, Workday's orange here. That's going to be consistent throughout the entire presentation. As with all, oops, I wanted to switch over here just so I don't have to fill that out. I've got Acme Technologies as my fake prototypical customer here. So this is the roadmap for Acme Technologies. It's exactly the same type of value story that we talk about all the time. We're starting with a discovery product overview for getting to know you and your business. We go to a high level look at value, then customizing the value and getting into tweaking the solution to fit your needs. And I think I hit some security thing there. Okay, so jumping into the value overview, here's where we see that high level value proposition. And this came directly from the AI. What's nice about LeveragePoint is that you can click and you can customize that, right? So if you've got a specific customer who cares a little bit more about this than that, you can customize that before you get in front of them. You can customize that while you're on the call with them, and a nice image to go with it. I should mention, as kind of in terms of what we're showing here today and where we're going, the imagery, we're pulling that in manually right now. So all of the text and all of the math that you see here is all been completely generated by the AI and automated, filled out this value story. But the imagery, we kind of pulled that in manually, and that will be automated in the next couple of months. So we've got the high level data, right? So actually pulling the important key pieces of information from that generated value story that came from ChatGPT right onto one screen, where you can say, okay, this is all the high level information that we need about your business, Mr. and Ms. Customer, to kind of start tailoring this. How many employees are in your organization, right? It's not 1,000, you're only 750. Okay, right? How many days does it take to typically hire? Maybe you're a little bit better than average at 45 days to hire, et cetera, et cetera. So you can fill that out in front of the customer. We've got the key benefits. Again, here, this is all pulled in automatically, created by the Gen AI into this nice, neat little summary slide. I want to jump ahead to one of our value driver or business impact slides. So I'll come to the third one here on the improved talent acquisition. So again, like I mentioned, we've got this math coming directly from the tool. You'll notice, though, of course, the 45 days that I adjusted on the previous slide there. But the key thing to this slide is the value driver formula. We're going with a very standardized conventional formula where you start with what we think of as a key performance metric, 45 days to hire. That's kind of your current performance metric. Your improvement by switching to the new solution, in this case, Workday's talent management software, and then a dollarization or a financialization factor, right? How much does that cost? So if we're saving, if we're saving 20% of 45 days at $2,000 a day, we can roll up the math. At the very end, we've got our waterfall, right? So employee retention, talent acquisition, performance management, all adds up to $3.2 million of value, minus this somewhat completely bogus price that I put in here for the purpose of the demo, because I wanted to show you also that we're not only automating the creation of this waterfall chart, but we're also automating this time to value chart, right? So I put in those numbers there, an upfront investment and an annual cost that probably bear no resemblance to reality, but you can see here that we've got this really nice chart that gets automated based on those inputs, right? So we start off, below zero with our initial investment. We have here a setup period of 9 months. And so we start to receive value after that, and we get a payback in 19 months, right? And you'll see that, again, just like with everything in LeveragePoint, it's all customizable. So if you have a shorter setup period, if you can get up going faster, you'll have a quicker payback as well. Okay. Let me switch gears just to kind of summarize. I'm going to share a quick slide or two. So the LeveragePoint Gen AI plan is all about embedding our expertise in a workflow that's going to reduce the time to good value content. And I should say here that it's really about creating good draft value stories, right? We're not talking about creating a final thing, a final presentation that you're going to go and immediately put in front of a customer. I don't think that's reasonable to ask from a Gen AI tool at this point. And it's really not something that I think you'd want to do anyway, right? You want to get your product managers involved, but rather than staring at a blank screen and not knowing what to create, this really gives them something to start with. And so what should that thing look like? That value story, that draft value story, it has to include a good economic value analysis. It's got to include messaging. And of course, that third important element, right, that we talked about, design, branding, and imagery. And so coming soon, right, we've got everything that I showed you today, creation of those value stories, but with a seamless integration in the LeveragePoint platform, together with a streamlined and interactive user experience, right? So if you're used to talking to a ChatGPT or Google Gemini or one of the other AIs, and you know how you can do interactive and you can evaluate some of the responses and come back and say, oh, let me tweak this a little bit. Let me, can you change that a little bit? You'll be able to do all of that before you create your draft. And then of course, go and update the draft in LeveragePoint and make it better and better before you're ready to present it. But one quick little plug here is, coming soon in the new year, we'll be opening up to beta launch to customers in select process. So if you are interested, please do go ahead and sign up in our exit survey for that early access coming next year. And before I turn it back over to Nick, just the guiding principles here again, right? Speed and design, creating an initial value story with underlying value logic in minutes, right? We talked about this earlier. Nick had said, I think, we're thinking about maybe 30 hours of time to create a draft value story. I'll tell you from all the projects I work on, that's probably pretty accurate view. But the question is, do those 30 hours happen consecutively? No, not normally, right? You've got a lot of time between meetings and things can stretch out from weeks to months. So we want to create a good draft, not in months, not in weeks, not in days, and not even in hours. Right now, we're creating these in hours. We're going to get down to minutes. So speed, design, value, content, quality, right? We understand value, and through this smart prompt engineering, we can embed the best quantification practices. And finally, and this is really, really crucial, and it's not something that you saw in the demo today, which is enterprise-grade security and features. I should say you saw the security, but you didn't see it for integrating your own content. So one of the things that we expect from a lot of our customers is the want to integrate your own content, right? So this is going to be especially helpful for new product launches. Now, with existing products that are out there in the market, ChatGPT and the other Gen AI solutions can go out there and collect all the information they really need to put together a good value story. But if you're working on a product launch, they might not have access to that information, which is totally confidential and proprietary. So building in enterprise-grade security for ingesting that material. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Aaron. So that's I think the audience got to see a little bit about why we're really excited about the future of value selling because of the things that generative AI, the efficiencies that Gen AI is unlocking. So thank you for presenting your shared learnings on this. So I wanted to open the discussion focus the rest of the presentation on kind of an open discussion on what we've all learned over the course of the last year or two working with Gen AI. But first, for those of you who want to implement bits and pieces of AI in your go-to-market process, I've got a few examples of ways to do so across product management, marketing, and sales. This isn't quite the end-to-end approach that we just talked about in Aaron's presentation, but they're great examples of tasks that can be quickly done using ChatGPT, like Aaron did for the first part of the presentation. Things that can save you a lot of you in the audience a lot of time time. And a lot of these, if you look through them, tend to be point solutions, automating, time-consuming tasks, and that's really one of the best use cases for Gen AI right now. So in the post-webinar follow-up, which you should be getting probably Monday at the latest, I'm going to include a few samples of some prompt starters that we've been experimenting with here at LeveragePoint to just make our day-to-day lives more efficient. But these are all things that touch on people's day-to-day value selling, value communication efforts. So now I'd like to spend some time digging into a discussion about how we're all using AI today. So Coralie, at ABB, how are you currently using AI in your role? How are you seeing it evolve in your organization? I'd love to hear what you've seen.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So I think, I saw a lot of topics on your previous slide already, but ABB is a very large organization, so AI is used in different areas and different levels. But when it comes to ABB electrification, marketing, and sales, where I belong to, AI is really instrumental in several key areas these days already. So it's all sorts of speed, efficiency, quality improvements. And I think one of the key areas would be business intelligence right now. So we use AI for enhanced decision-making and strategic planning through in-depth analysis of, business, market, competitor data, along with the efficient data integration as well. And then I think, so there's definitely campaigns and customer engagement. So we use it for stuff like campaigns, concept and briefs, campaign strategy development, or to enhance and combine existing content. We also leverage AI for generating marketing content. And I think one of the key things where I think it's really great these days already is quality improvements. So for instance, tools like LeveragePoint, so they help us to draft initial value drivers for specific value models. So, and that not only speeds up the process, but it really also enhances creativity by suggesting value drivers that our team sometimes might not even have initially considered. So, and I think that's particularly powerful for existing products, because that really allows us to compare and refine our value proposition against our competitors. And I think it really also provides like real-time feedback and suggestions so that we really can improve the effectiveness of our value proposition. So really ensuring they resonate better with our target audience. So
yeah. So thank you, Coralie. And I think that was your comments were an interesting in line with Aaron's comments on the new product versus existing product. And I think there's a lot of, in addition to ideating new product development, there's some really good use cases for, as you said, uncovering value drivers for existing solution that you might not have thought of, things more in the reign of the intangibles. So I think that's another really exciting thing that where we see the potential in companies being able to take advantage of. So Brian, what are your thoughts on using AI in your day-to-day role as a sales leader?
Yeah, I think we spend a lot of time as a salesperson, we spend a lot of time researching new companies, maybe leads coming in or new people we're talking to. So we want to understand their company quickly. We want to understand their competition potentially quickly. So the industry that they're in, and specifically what's happening in that industry, what changes are happening, what initiatives, what threats are happening, and really sort of understanding new technologies, kind of interplayed throughout that. What's the transformation happening underlying in terms of new technologies? A lot of that gets to the value that these companies are providing. Personally for me, I want to understand, are the companies we're talking to, are they established in their industry? Maybe they're the premium price supplier. Maybe they're getting competition from lower price competitors, and that's their biggest threat. So they need to be able to sort of protect their price, and learning who those companies are, and learning kind of what the technology drivers are is what AI is really great at. So that's, we use it for a lot.
Yeah, and Brian, like you spoke to some of the things that we just showed on that slide where AI is helping you customize, tailor, even bite-sized pieces of content that might not be a full-on value story to make your value selling process more effective. So I think that's a really great example. Shifting to the future, if you will, what are some aspects of harnessing AI and the value quantification and communication space do each of you find most exciting? So Coralie, maybe share your thoughts on that.
Sure. So, I mean, I think it's exciting for several reasons. In ABB electrification, I think AI significantly accelerates really the process of creating value proposition content. So it really provides a solid starting point with draft value drivers, making it really much easier for colleagues to get started and also onboarded with the methodology and everything. So then rather starting from scratch. And I think we all agree that it's always easier to start working on something, and at least you have a bit of a foundation instead of really have a blank sheet. So I think that is definitely quite exciting, and it's really great to see that the benefit extends beyond newcomers. So even our well-educated product managers, so they find it really useful. So it offers a very quick and efficient way to validate ideas around value drivers and really often uncovering new insight in the process. So and I think it's also great to see that they are really enthusiastic about it. So people really, for us in my background now, they really appreciate the new technology and really its potential to streamline their work. So I think that really now is changing more and more so that people really see the power of AI.
That all makes sense, and I think all the reason to be excited. And I think Brian has one of the voices within LeveragePoint that's particularly bullish on AI. So tell me what excites it about you the most.
Yeah, the idea that I think about more and more, which we're not touching on a lot in this particular webinar, but I think you'll hear more about it, is really combining innovation with value. So, you know, if we go back to product development, when product manager is trying to think about a new product to build, what they should be building, what the value of those ideas are that they're thinking about building, you know, generating those ideas for new products, thinking about what the value is of those new ideas quickly, ranking that, and being able to make decisions about what to build based on the amount of value that it provides, I think is will become more and more interesting. I think AI can help understand that quickly, and you don't hear a lot about that today, or at least I don't think I do. So the idea of innovation and value becoming sort of more closely aligned throughout the development process, all the way through, of course, to what we've been talking about today, I think is the most exciting things that we'll be hearing more about.
Yeah, I think these are all great reasons to be excited, and I think it's really important when looking to the future to also be cognizant of the landscape, creating new challenges as it solves previous challenges. So Coralie and Brian both, I'll start with Coralie. What are your thoughts about some of the new challenges and concerns that AI might present, and how are you thinking about, you know, if you have thought through how to handle them, how are you thinking about that?
So I think, I mean, these kind of technologies are obviously not new to us. So, I mean, they fall under certain data regulations already. So, for example, that EU AI Act regulations in Europe is really quite good at protecting end users. But how we saw also with GDPR, for example, not all the markets are really working at the same pace. So, and we are a global organization operating across different countries. So we always ensure all countries are really compliant with global policies. I think that's really important for us. And I also see technical challenges. I think, I mean, we all know AI systems are not infallible and they can make errors, sometimes with significant consequences. So really ensuring the reliability and accuracy of AI systems is really, I think, a major technical challenge. So we really need to ensure that data and content is really of good quality, as also a lot of time can be wasted for newcomers to get the correct output. Also, like what Aaron said, if you have wrong prompts and not high quality prompts, it's always a tricky thing. And also developing AI systems that really can scale effectively across the different applications and environments. I mean, that's really, I think, remains a complex task. Yeah.
Yeah, I think these are all things that we're thinking about as well. I know as an enterprise organization, we look to leading companies like ABB, and we really value what they consider, high priority, because as you said, there's going to be more regulatory concerns as the law catches up to the technology, and there's also just safety and brand considerations as well. Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I'm concerned in a year from now, there'll be a cartoon Brian here who will be talking to everyone, and I'll be sitting on the couch listening. But no, I think it can go lots of different ways. I'm not sure I have any major concerns yet, but as they happen, things evolve so quickly now that I think even what we're thinking about today might change completely in a few months. So.
Yeah, but I think there's also really ethical and bias issues. I mean, so the systems really could perpetuate and even amplify existing biases if they are trained on biased data. So I think that really could lead to unfair treatment in different areas, like, I don't know, hiring, lending or something. So I think it's really important in the decision-making process, so to really ensure all the topics are raised in the right way and that we put it in place so that we really see how they are trained. So I think it's really essential how those models are trained, and that we really need to be aware what gets into them. So to really make sure we're not, being on the couch in a year.
Right.
So that's the worst scenario to think of, Brian. Like, I mean,
yeah, I was going to say, I'm 50-50 on that. So.
And
go
ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Because I think that's a really, really important point. It's talked about quite a lot, but we didn't really touch on it today, which is, how are these LLMs, these Gen AI models learning, right? And they're learning based on everything that you're doing in them, all the information you're giving them, right? So you do also want to think about and be cautious of how are you interacting with these models, and are you putting information in that you're comfortable with the models learning on. So one of the decisions that we at LeveragePoint made right away, super early on, was that we would only use a developer edition of ChatGPT. So, right, so we don't really want ChatGPT learning on all the information that we're putting in there, and I assume that goes double for for a lot of the organizations out there who you don't want to be putting proprietary information, confidential information into a question and answer with a chatbot. So you got to think about that, right? And which of these models are you going to use? Are you going to use the free public version? Are you going to get a paid version where it has more enhanced, options and can be, your information can be kept out of the learning model.
Yeah, and I think Aaron, that touches on another kind of consideration we make, is that you absolutely, when putting stuff in there, a good rule of thumb is stick to public domain information, right? So stuff that's out there, likely if it's on the internet, it's been scraped by an AI model. You have to be really cognizant and sensitive to anything that you'd want to have as that's anything that you would consider proprietary or proprietary data. So for any enterprise looking to invest in this, I'm sure, as Coralie mentioned, they're considering this as well. So that's a safety consideration that we make at LeveragePoint on a daily basis. So
and there's considerable upside, to the developments that are coming for being able to ingest information in a safe, right, in a safe way, right? So.
Yeah, and so as we productize this, we're gonna kind of share more about the security and safety considerations made. But I also want to touch on one of Coralie's point, which is use cases. So in banking and finance hiring, really the sensitivity really matters. If you're creating a meme, maybe a little less so. So I think about the context in which you're deploying your tool, the industry you work in, and that might help calibrate your risk tolerance when dealing with Gen AI, and always work with your internal team that's in charge of that, just to make sure that everything is in bounds. So with that, I'd like to jump into a few final takeaways before we get into the Q&A. So I think the first one is that AI is here and it's already being widely adopted by B2B. So McKinsey had a report recently that AI has the potential to unlock $1 trillion of sales and marketing productivity. So this is just the space in which we're talking about. And a separate report, about 80% of organizations have begun adopting, actually this is the same report, have begun adopting or plan to in the next year. In a separate report, 96% of marketers are prioritizing AI, most of whom are using it to improve productivity and exchange and enhance customer engagement. So it's already being widely used. And I think today the most effective use cases tend to be areas where in a point-by-point place, they can augment human skill and expertise. Vendors like us, but also across domains are weaving it into their workflows, typically attacking those easy to solve issues first, but also coming up with some really interesting creative AI solutions that help enhance productivity. So you're going to see a lot of productivity gains happen, but consistency requires training and refinement by humans with expertise, and that applies to both AI expertise as well as domain expertise. And that ties into some of the stuff Coralie was saying about you need to make sure that the systems are free of bias. You need to make sure that they're safe, that they're putting out the right message. And one kind of shift in thinking that we're seeing is a shift away from deterministic thinking towards probabilistic thinking. So in a software development environment, given a set of inputs, you should see the same output, but AI does not work that way. So you could put in the same response, same inputs, and get different responses every time you run it. So this is where we're starting to see where everybody, and ultimately, I don't know if they're going to be sitting on the couch, Brian, but for the foreseeable future, they're going to be an editor, where there's validating output from AI to ensure accuracy, safety, quality, what have you. We also know that effective B2B value quantification and communication is super complex, but highly impactful. It's one of the most important change management initiatives a B2B company can take. But the complexity sometimes hampers the impact. So by reducing this complexity, AI has the potential to transform the impact, the reach, and the economic outcomes of the companies that are ready to adopt it. Finally, human expertise is still needed, and as mentioned before, it appears at the time being to be refocused on high impact areas. So as a productivity enhancer, I think there's a lot of exciting things to be seen in the future. So just as a takeaway, there's two kind of next steps that folks interested in learning more can take. First of all, in the exit survey, you can ask for more information from anyone on the panel. But we also if anyone's interested in seeing a demo AI story using the model that Aaron showed that isn't quite productized yet, let us know in the exit survey. We can whip up an AI demo using LeveragePoint of one of your B2B solutions. If you're new to LeveragePoint, it's a quick way to see what the tool looks like in your branding. And you can also join the list to get early access to LeveragePoint beta, LeveragePoint AI beta when it's ready. So that will be the version that we want to put into users' hands to interact with themselves. So let us know in the exit survey if you're interested in either, and we look forward to hearing from you. So finally, we've got a time for a couple questions. So if anyone in the audience has questions, and I'm seeing a couple come in right now, obviously the session will be recorded and circulated. So I had a question on, I think this is an Aaron-facing one, but on the ability to select value drivers. So you just showed the AI model coming up with just a few random value drivers, but what if you wanted to parse them, hand select them, refine them? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's a really interesting trade-off, right? So you want to make sure that when you're working with an AI tool, you allow it the kind of space to be creative, right? So if you ask for what we always think of as the top 3 to 4 value drivers in order to tell a value story, if you just ask for that, you might get good ones, you might not get good ones. So we've been asking for more, right? And you get a longer list, and then you have to kind of go through them. So right now it's a little bit of manual process. You got to look at what comes out and see which ones resonate the most for you and kind of which ones don't. And what we're seeing a lot of times is that the messaging comes out really, really great. And so sometimes it's just like, okay, let me just pick which ones resonate the most and throw those into my draft value story. What I'm excited about is the interactive element, right? Because for me, I'm not the person that wants to sit there scrolling through a bunch of text, and some people do work better that way. And you can kind of go through that text and see what works and what doesn't work. I want to see it in LeveragePoint right away. And so I want to be able to get in there and say, show me 10 value drivers, and I'll pick the best ones and turn the other ones off. But wouldn't it also be cool if you could do that directly in the chat, as I mentioned earlier, right? Have the Gen AI solution tell you, here's a few ideas. What do you think, right? Don't give me the whole value story right away. Just give me a few ideas so I can react to them and make sure you, the Gen AI solution, are on the right path. So it's really, really cool how you can kind of use it to help guide that process.
All right. Let me parse through some of the questions. So when will a beta access be available? I think Aaron, you alluded to that a little bit earlier, but do you have it's going to be early next year or next year at some point, or will TBD?
Yeah.
We'll let people know.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that it'll be in the first half of next year.
Yeah. So we will let you know when it's ready. And if you sign up for a beta access, you'll be the first to know. And we're also we'll have some exciting upcoming announcements about other ways to get involved as well. So
yeah,
you're gonna say?
We're churning these out, really fast already on our side. We need to put together the end user experience, right? So it's really, really exciting.
Yeah. Oh, this is an interesting one on and I think this might be one of the last ones. So last call for questions. Gen AI models, there's a bunch out there. What's our approach to the different models, and do we have feelings about that? So I think that might be Aaron facing again.
Yeah, so I've played around with a bunch of the different models, and it is really, really interesting. I find Google's Gemini to be incredibly easy to use and super practical for a lot of the day-to-day type of stuff that I do. But when it comes to the type of analysis we're doing, it just doesn't perform nearly as well as ChatGPT. And so we're kind of using ChatGPT as our default for today. We're really agnostic, and Anthropic has shown incredible promise as potentially being even better than ChatGPT at being able to do financial analyses. But in terms of what we're doing today, we're kind of we're completely agnostic, but we're using ChatGPT primarily.
Great. Aaron, I'll close with one question directed to you, since you didn't get a chance to answer this. What are you most excited about? I'll put you on the spot here, and for the Gen AI future and value communication selling.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm really excited for the, I'm a prog nerd, right? So I'm excited to see the folks who are using this, how fast they get to quality content, right? So I'm already seeing that today, and I just can't wait to show it to customers and have them start interacting with it and see how, with a few really simple inputs, like you saw me put today, the name of the company, the name of the solution, and the quality of the analysis that you get back. And like I said, also, I'm really excited about the branding that we're working on, and the images, and bringing all of that together to create really a nice picture. For me, people talk about, I think of, architecture and houses as a nice analogy. Like, if I look at an empty room or the structure of a house, I can't really picture what it's going to look like with furniture and art and all of that. And some people can. I'm not that guy. We kind of take the same approach here, right? It's really, really hard to envision what a final value story is for a lot of people, myself included, when you're just looking at an Excel spreadsheet of some math. And so being able to create that high quality draft value story right away is so crucial.
I think that's right, and I think we're all really excited to bring that to life. And I think there's going to be more innovation in the broader value community to be had. So I want to thank before we leave. Just give a notice for our next month's webinar. We're going to be joined once again by Stefan Leozu, and he'll be digging deep into many of the best practices of a proactive customer value approach. We reviewed some of that approach a little bit earlier in the webinar, starting from quantification to value communication. So this should be a great discussion. Stefan's a fan favorite. We can't wait to have him in here to talk, dig deeper into some of the themes we discussed here. So make sure you pre-register in the exit survey. And that's it for us today. So thank you all for taking the time to join us, and a special big thank you for Coralie for graciously joining our panel and providing your helpful insights. And from all of us here at LeveragePoint, have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.
Welcome. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.